What's up, guys? Jeremy here, All Things Man. If we look back in history at a lot of the great leaders, there's a lot of characteristics that we're going to see between all of them. But one that we'll definitely see is all of them are voracious readers. So what kind of stuff are they reading, and what kind of things should a man nowadays be reading? Well, that's definitely up to interpretation, and you're going to get a lot of different answers. But I thought I would throw together a quick list of some books that I felt are at least a good base for everybody to read. Alright, with that said, let's get started. Alright, number one on the list, Holy Bible. If you can only have one book on your list, this is it. It's got good stories, moral teachings. Even if you're not a Christian, this kind of explains a lot of where your laws come from and things like that. So number one, the Holy Bible. Alright, number two, the Armed Forces Officer. These are lessons of leadership that were born in battle. It goes through all kinds of things. There's many things that any man who's interested in leading other people, or even just leading your own family. Many good lessons in here. A side note, Jocko Willink on his podcast, the Jocko podcast, does a good description of this book. He kind of goes through a lot of the highlights of it, so I recommend you check that out as well. Alright, number three on the list is going to be Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This book by some has been called the greatest book ever written. It's been called the definitive text on self-discipline, personal ethics, humility, self-actualization, things like that. And it's a good test for you just to try to read through it, because it's not the easiest read, but it has great information, so that's definitely on the list. Alright, next up we're going to go with 1984, George Orwell. Alright, so this was originally written in the 1940s, and it's just as relevant today. It goes through the political systems, the double speak, Big Brother state. That's where you've ever heard that Big Brother and didn't know where it came from. It came from here. So I definitely recommend you check this one out. You want to see what a dystopian hellhole looks like? Read this. Alright, next up we'll stay with that same vein, but just a little bit different. We'll go Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. This is more a technological story where they basically make babies in test tubes and to design their society, as compared to 1984 where it was the political rule and the nanny state. They kind of designed their dystopian hellhole in this, but it's still a dystopian hellhole. Alright, next up, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. The Russian immigrant, she saw how things were under a communist regime. So she came up with her own philosophical system she called objectivism. So this book goes over the differences in her philosophy with the way she saw things could be going in the U.S. So Dagny Taggart and Hank Rearden, John Galt, all these characters show the differences in how things could be and should be versus how they are or could be on the opposite front. So, a very good book. Alright, next up I'm going with For a New Liberty, Murray Rothbard. He traces the intellectual origins of libertarianism in this book. He's called the father of modern libertarianism. He trained under Ludwig von Mises, kind of got his Austrian economics background there, under studying the works of Hayek and some others. So, this is just a pretty good book. He writes it in a way that it's understandable and kind of will show you what's going on. So I recommend that one. Alright, next up we'll go with The Art of War, Sun Tzu. This is just a classic text on war strategy. And I think it would do any man well to read this book in many different aspects of their life. It doesn't just refer to military operations and stuff like that. You can take a lot out of it. So, alright, the next one up, we'll go with Confederacy of Dunces. So this is a pretty entertaining book, and the main character, he kind of shows us what to do by showing us what not to do. He's a intelligent man that just seems to have no street smarts and just makes the wrong decisions. So this is definitely a good book. I think he won the Pulitzer Prize for this, if I'm not wrong. Oh yes, he did win the Pulitzer Prize, so other people agree with me. Alright, next up, Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, I don't think much has to be said about Lord of the Rings, but it's just great stories. You could throw The Hobbit in here if you want as well. But this is Tolkien teaching of many manly virtues: loyalty, friendship, dedication, and just the amount of work that he put into these stories. He came up with his own languages, maps, everything to come up with this. So I put this on the list. And you don't have to get the leather-bound special edition like I did. But why not? Right? Alright, next up, The Creature from Jekyll Island. This was by G. Gordon Griffin. This basically just it's a fascinating look into our monetary system, where the Federal Reserve came from, how it was established. So it's not a, well, I was going to say it's not a monster book, but you might disagree after reading it. I recommend you check it out. Alright, next up we'll go with Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. He just discusses his time being raised in Hawaii, his rich dad and his poor dad. One is his real father, one is his friend's father. They learn different things from each one, and he kind of puts it into a story. There's a controversy about this book, but it's recommended by a lot of people like Dave Ramsey, Damon Johns, Oprah Winfrey, Will Smith. So you could do worse than some of those people for recommendations. Alright, and last one on the list, The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. It kind of repudiates the deferred life plan style of living. Shows how he simplified and automated systems in his life to have more time for doing fun things and less time wasted. I mean, you don't have to believe everything if you can take something from it. I highly recommend it. It's sold millions of copies, so others agree as well. So this is what I have so far for my list. If you have any that you'd like to add, please comment below. If you like this information or you'd like to see some other book list, maybe geared towards particular sectors, let me know that as well. And if you would, subscribe. Alright, so as always, stay safe,